Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to do another episode on distribution. So distribution is, in my estimation, the foundation of the film business. You make a great movie, and that's great, but you need to sell it. You need to get it in front of audiences and make sure they're aware of it, and that's what distribution is all about. So pay close attention. If you want to be a successful indie filmmaker, you need to know a lot about not just the production of movies, but the business. We are going to tell you the truth and reality of what really happens in the indie film business. All right, today we have the honor of having Berry Meyerowitz on. He is the president of Quiver Distribution based in Canada, but he does business all over the world, primarily in the United States and Canada. And Berry and I have known each other for a couple of years. So Berry, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us, first of all, how you and I met, and then sort of what your trajectory was to get to where you are today.
Okay, well, thank you for having me today. My first job in the entertainment industry was working for Jeff in 1996. I had just finished my MBA, and Jeff was leaving a large Canadian media company called Astral to go start a new business with some partners, and he hired me as his first employee. And as he used to like to say, I was as green as the grass. Didn't know a whole lot because in school they don't teach you much that's practical, especially about film distribution. And we had a great couple years together. I learned so much from Jeff along the way. We had a really good time. We traveled all over the place. This was in the heyday of the VHS video days, before even DVD. And we were building a solid business in kids entertainment, in licensing and merchandising. And it was one of the best jobs I've had, and we had a really fun time doing it.
We did. We really did enjoy that. Yeah.
And then a couple of years later, I was recruited to relaunch the Canadian office of 20th Century Fox Home Entertainment. At that time, Fox Canada was being run as a sales office out of the LA office. And
as I like to say, Fox stole you from me. That's how I say it, which was a compliment to you and to all of us because you were at that caliber.
So Fox had a new president who had just become the head of worldwide operations, and he had joined Fox from Pepsi, where he set up individual territory-specific P&Ls around Europe. And then when he became president of worldwide, which included the domestic US and Canada, he couldn't understand why Canada was being run as part of the US, and I was the first hire to start separating that business. And I had a really interesting first year at Fox. The content was amazing, from the X-Files movie to There's Something About Mary, The Full Monty. These are all the big movies that I worked on. And then the second year I found very frustrating, a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of decision makers, a lot of paperwork. And at that time, I wasn't that happy over a while. I wanted to move to the US. I wanted to get going with my career. And the internet was really taking off. This is 1997, 8. And I ended up moving to New York. And I worked for a number of startups there over 4 years. And then at the end of that tenure, Jeff came to town. And Jeff owned 2 businesses at the time. And he was selling one of them. And as part of that deal, he had to divest his control over the entertainment business, which had been renamed Kaboom Entertainment. And over a couple of days in New York, he and I made a deal where I would take over the business from him. And a few months later, I moved back to Toronto, and we had a one-day handoff in the office.
Yep.
And he was gone.
But you knew what you were doing. You knew, and I trusted you implicitly.
Yeah. And then ran that business for 3 years. We sold it to a Canadian and U.S. publicly traded production services company called Peace Arch Entertainment. They wanted to add distribution to all of their production business. Joined Peace Arch, ran home entertainment. During that time, we bought a U.S. distribution business. And the stock was moving really nicely. And then there was a traumatic incident at the American film market in, I think, 98, maybe.
No, a little later. No, we
Sorry?
didn't. We didn't
2008.
Yeah. 2008.
2008.
Yeah.
Where we had a big party at AFM. We had just produced a movie with Meg Ryan and Bill Macy. It's a big event for our company. And then the next day, we were all either staying in LA for a couple of days or flying home. And at the end of the day, we couldn't reach our CEO. And then we found out that he he was arrested at LAX by the FBI for alleged bank fraud. And that was the beginning of the end of Peace Arch Entertainment. I stayed at Peace Arch for another year or so. I was under contract, and then I was able to cut a deal with them. It was a very fortuitous, lucky, creative deal where I was able to take on a couple of their shareholders, one of whom was suing them, as well as work out a deal with CIBC, with the bank here, where they were in special loans. And I was able to buy the assets of the Canadian and US distribution businesses. And in April 2009, I amalgamated them into a new company called Phase 4 Films.
Which, because it was the fourth phase of your entertainment career, that's why you called it that.
Correct, the fourth iteration of my film tenure. And one of the things that we had done really well is that we had established a joint venture with a company in the US that had a Walmart vendor number. In those days of DVD, Walmart was the preeminent retailer. Very difficult for independents to get in. You had to go through an aggregator in Texas called Anderson Merchandisers. So we were able to establish a JV where we ran the business through the Walmart number, and then over time we bought out our partner and we became the sole owner of the vendor number. And that really helped drive our business in video as well as across all media. It was a fantastic operation. We had incredible people. The business grew rapidly over 5 years. And then in 2014, I sold that business to a large Canadian entertainment company called Entertainment One. I went to E1 to run their US film business. Enjoyed it in the beginning, but culturally it didn't fit with what I was looking for. And then a couple years later, I had a parting of the ways with E1 in a friendly, respectful way. And during this time, I had a board of advisors. One of my advisors was a friend of mine named Jeff Sackman. Jeff and I would talk a lot about what the future held.
Who also is from the film industry, spent most of his career in the film business.
He owned the company that sold in to become Lionsgate. He ran a company called Think Film, which was a leading independent theatrical distributor. And then he was a sole proprietor for many years, producing films, consulting, raising financing. And when I was in the process of leaving, we discussed what it would look like for us to come together. I had a couple projects that I was bringing with me from E1. He had a couple projects, and we ended up setting up a new business that launched officially in 2017. And we actually started off by producing films in order to sell them to global distributors such as the studios or Netflix and Amazon. We're just then getting into buying movies for multiple territories. And we produced 12 movies over a 3 or 4 year period, most of which were sold one time to Amazon or Netflix or Sony or Paramount. And it was a straightforward business. But the last couple of movies, we could not sell all rights. We were only able to sell the US pay TV rights. And then we had to license the ancillary rights to independent distributors who were friends of mine. We all grew up together. And we recognized that if someone was going to buy it for argument's sake, $100,000, that means they were going to generate $200,000 or $300,000. So why should we license the rights out when we know this business and I know this business really, really well? So the next year we set up Quiver Distribution as a full service distribution, production, acquisition business. Headquartered in Toronto, the focus of the business was and continues to be the US market. Fast forward to today, we've just had our 5-year or 6-year anniversary. We have an incredible team of people located in Toronto, Los Angeles, and Nashville. And we are trying to punch above our weight in a very complicated, competitive marketplace right now where it's truly a buyer's market from the platforms, where DVD doesn't exist anymore in real numbers, where pay-per-view is only good for live events, and where the video on demand marketplace is also very taxed because so many consumers have multiple subscription services, which have basically rendered the value of content to not be worth much. And that is really the biggest problem we face in the business. There's 2 issues. Number one is when you're watching a movie on Netflix and you don't like it, you can switch to another movie and there's no cost of switching. So consumers do not have an appreciation for paying for content like they used to.
Or loyalty to any type of viewership.
Yeah. And the second component is with social media now and YouTube and so many different methods, the pie is so much bigger than it ever used to be. So for young people especially, but for people of all ages to commit to spending 90 minutes to watch a film, that's valuable time for them, and we need to make it worth their while. So we need to continue to enhance our offerings by producing and acquiring higher caliber films to compete with the studios. And that continues to be a very challenging proposition, yet we always find angles. We're a very entrepreneurial team, and we can pivot much more quickly than the studios do. And we are very customer friendly, meaning our customers, the platforms like iTunes and Netflix and Amazon and studios to a degree, sometimes we sell to them. Our goal is to be the best partners that we can in the business. And sometimes that means punching much higher than we would like to. We are in market right now with a film called Cleaner. It's an action movie starring Daisy Ridley from Star Wars and Clive Owen. It's a $25 million production. We acquired the North American rights. It was a significant acquisition for us. We are finishing our theatrical run this coming weekend. It'll end up grossing in the $800,000 range. And now we are setting it up for premium video on demand on March 21st, which is where all of our focus is. And then after that, it will go to one of the platforms for a pay television window.
So you didn't make that movie, you're just acquiring it.
We were the beneficiary of someone else acquiring it and being able to acquire it at a number that made sense for us in the current marketplace.
Right. So you're going to put a lot of marketing prowess behind it, obviously. I mean, you did for the theatrical release. How wide was the theatrical release? How many?
We're in about 350 screens in the U.S. marketplace. We have put in a lot of marketing, and we will continue to put in a lot of marketing as we lead into the PVOD release on March 21.
Okay. So here's what, Barry, you and I obviously have a long history, and, I focus now, as you know, on smaller independent productions. Like the stuff, my sweet spot is less than $1 million. So I'm not dealing in $25 million movies with theatrical releases. That's more or less what this podcast is for that audience, indie filmmakers who want to try to make something and get it out there. But you are super entrepreneurial. I know that. I always like that about you. That's why we got along so well. You take charge and you pivot, like you said, quickly. You're able to kind of assess what goes on in the marketplace and deal with it accordingly and realistically. Remember, the name of this podcast is Indie Filmmaking, Truth and Reality. So you're not delusional. You say, guys, maybe because it worked before, it doesn't mean it's going to work in the future. So you pivot. But let's focus on the low budget indie film, like the $500,000 indie film that, okay, first of all, we both agree a lot of them are garbage. Those aren't going to get any distribution. So let's look at the ones that are decent, because there are filmmakers who can actually make something that is decently entertaining at that budget level, but is not going to have any recognizable talent. Is there a market for that?
Absolutely there is. We have seen a couple of our friends, partners, excel in this area, specifically on AVOD, on advertising video on demand. What's happened in the last few years as the linear broadcasters like Showtime and Peacock are having a much more difficult time, or they're not buying as much, it has really provided way more buying power to Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, for the most part, those three, specifically for independent film. So the bar is much higher. So we continue to sell to them. We try to make deals with them. At the same time, AVOD has really taken off over the last 5 years. And AVOD, as I'm sure everyone knows, is the same looking platform, but it's advertising interspersed into the programming. It's similar to watching television. And AVOD has grown rapidly, where the biggest players are Tubi, which is owned by Fox, and Amazon has an AVOD service also that is very successful. And YouTube is a
right. Freevee is Amazon's, and Pluto is owned by Paramount, and and CBS.
Pluto is fantastic. They do more in the TV series side than the feature side, but absolutely Pluto is a big player in the space.
But this is all vertically integrated. These are all these platforms are owned by bigger studios or media companies.
Correct. And they've had to be. Even that's why the studios are owned by multinationals, because you can't afford to take a loss of $100 million on a movie and survive if you're a one-trick pony.
Right.
So AVOD has really grown significantly, and we have some friends of ours, and we do a significant AVOD business today, but we have friends of ours who simply acquire movies strictly for AVOD, and we do a portion of this as well. And it's not about the actors, it's about the genre, it's about the creativity of the director, it's about the key art, the poster art, and it's about the trailer. We had a movie in December of this year that generated $80,000 on one of the AVOD platforms back to us, just in 1 month. So if it works, it works. There's also other movies that generate $100 back to us. You never really know what's going to work, but if you position the movie and make it properly where you're actually thinking about the assets that you need to exploit the film before you make the movie, that is where you are best positioned to be successful. The challenge with low budget independent films, so say under $1 million, is for the most part, producers are just scraping to raise the money and put the pictures on screen. They're not thinking about what assets am I going to use to market the movie. So a lot of the time when we acquire a smaller film, they didn't do a photo shoot, they didn't do a gallery shoot, they had someone with a camera shooting, B-roll on screen. It's not particularly usable. So we have to then go into the movie and do what's called screen grabs from the movie, which is not the best way to do it. It's costly, it's time consuming, and you don't get the best material. So we have been advising, and frankly, we've actually partnered with one of our friends, and we're in the process of finalizing a movie that costs substantially less than $500,000 as a test for us. And we went into it as we would any other movie that cost $5 million. We put together a creative brief. Here are the selling points of the movie. Here are the still photography shots that we want. Here's the background. Here's the trailer that we want. We did that all before the first day of principal photography. And then we hired someone to be on set to make sure we captured every single one of those things while the shoot was happening. And we carved out time in the schedule to do a proper gallery shoot. 90% of independent movies don't do that.
No, 99%, not 90, 99.
Okay. I'm trying to be nice.
Yeah.
So that there is definitely a marketplace for it. And if you're a creative producer and you can find a director who's got talent, and there's a market for it. There's infinite consumption from the world right now.
Okay, but those AVOD platforms are very crowded. I mean, you're talking Tubi could have 200,000 movies, of which, say, 50,000 are studio movies in, third, fourth, fifth release windows. So, my little indie $500,000 film is going to be competing with Jurassic Park as people are going through. That's that's tough too, right? To get noticed and stand out from the crowd.
Definitely. Tubi, as an example, they were on track, close to your number, but not quite. They were on track for 100,000 titles, and now they're stopping. I think they're in the 60,000 range. It doesn't really matter, 60, 200, it's still thousands. So it's about what we can do to ensure that the marketing and merchandising team on the Tubi front recognize that this film can work with their audience. So is it similar to other movies of the same genre? Is it from a director who's done well before? But also a lot of it is the distributor that is positioning the movie. We have hundreds of movies on Tubi right now. We're able to have a conversation with them about why this makes sense, how to introduce it, what's the right date for it, what's the right seasonality, is there a theme that we can tie into on launch because it's a romantic comedy we want to do it around Valentine's Day. There's all these different nuances that we try to bring to the table to help the filmmaker position their movie. And then we're at the mercy of the gods. Sometimes you just don't know how it's going to perform. And that's why I said sometimes our movies generate $100 and sometimes they generate $80,000. It's a bit of a crapshoot.
Okay. Do filmmakers ever come to you and say, I'm going to get involved in marketing? I'm very passionate about my movie. Obviously, I feel like I made a decent film and it's entertaining. But now I realize, because I've listened to enough podcasts, that I need to be involved in the marketing side because the distributor just doesn't have the time to focus on every movie or the resources. So I'm going to spend, 50 or 100 grand on doing a very robust, say, social media campaign with some influencers and help you position my movie so that people are actually aware of it when it goes on to Tubi. Does that ever happen?
It does. The majority of the cases are filmmakers who say, we want to help you. What can we do? And we point them in the right direction in terms of social media and stunts and anything we can do. It is rare for a producer or filmmaker to come to us and say, we have allocated a portion of our budget for marketing and merchandising. It has happened before, but it doesn't happen often. And it's a great way to approach it, that if you're going to raise $100,000 for a movie, try to raise $150,000 and keep that $50,000 aside to market the movie, because you will be head and shoulders above everyone else who has $100,000 movie.
So if and I tell filmmakers to do that all the time, but it's painful for them to do that because they get the other 50, they're going to want to spend it on making the movie. Then they'll say, we'll figure it out later, marketing, but they never do. So if somebody were to come to you and say, I spent $500,000 on my movie, but I tucked away another $100,000 for marketing, is it better if they spend it themselves or give it to you to spend it?
It's a coordinated effort. So typically we get better deals. We have better access because we advertise regularly with all the sites. We have a deal with publicists. So typically we'd put it together and collaborate with the filmmaker to ensure that here's how much we're spending on publicity, here's how much on events, here's on social, here's on paid media. Are we going to do an event for it? So we work on it together.
Okay, I am going to ask you the tough question right now. This question I'm going to ask you, and I'm going to ask it to you because we've known each other a long time and I can be straight up and honest with you. But this is a question that every filmmaker should ask, but they actually don't even know to ask this question. And if they actually did know to ask this question, they would probably be too intimidated to ask it. Here's my question to you. So you just talked about AVOD and how robust it can be if, a film catches a spark or something like that. You gave the example of $80,000 in the first month and everything like that. Somebody makes a film for $500,000. Are filmmakers making their money back? Like AVOD, that's a lot of views.
No, it's very difficult to make your money back if you're just relying on AVOD and in the domestic market.
Thank you for your honesty.
But if you're making a movie for $100,000 and it's a genre like a horror film or an action movie that can play, and that's one of the things that I have working on right now. Our team is working on that with another partner who's producing a movie for less than $500,000 as a test for us.
Yeah.
Then it's possible, because the key is, first of all, make a film that can travel around the world. Comedies don't typically travel internationally. American comedies, different nuance, different language, different sensibilities.
Right.
What travels? Action travels, sci-fi to a degree, thrillers travel, family movies travel. You want to try to have a film that can be sold everywhere around the world, whether it's dubbed or subtitled. So on the film that I'm referring to, it was being sold in Berlin, and I think we'll end up doing $50,000.
So when you say Berlin, let me just clarify. The European film market was recently. That's when you say Berlin. That's where it happens, the European film market in Berlin.
So we brought this movie, and you're getting $5,000 from a market, or maybe Germany, the biggest international market's paying $15,000. Like, you're just cobbling together nickels and dimes to try to add up to something that's real, because then it reduces your reliance on recouping from the US and Canada, which is the biggest market. So at $500,000 for an AVOD direct movie, that's tough. It's happened before, by the way. There are lots of examples of it happening, but it's rare. At $500,000, you'd hope to have some kind of talent in the film, TV stars, someone who can make it higher profile. And then you're going to try to get it on TVOD. You're going to try to make the transactional business happen. And you're going to, before you go to AVOD, you're going to try to see if you can put it into a package with one of the bigger platforms. So if they want a big movie, you can say, okay, please add in a few others.
So you mean on SVOD? You're talking a package. Correct. On SVOD. All right, let's just talk about TVOD for a second. So that's transactional video on demand, when people say rent for $4.99 or buy for $10 or $11. Is there business there for these kind of movies that really nobody knows about?
It's purely opportunistic. In the old DVD days, we would, try to position them at the cash, and it was an impulse purchase. It's similar today. It's a much steeper hill because consumers have so much choice, right? So if you have subscriptions to Amazon Prime and Netflix and Hulu, are you going to take the risk on buying a movie for $4.99, renting it for $4.99 for 48 hours? Cleaner, as an example, is a big ticket item. We're putting out a premium video on demand, which is $20 rental for 2 days. And then it'll go down in price over time. So we have films at every level of the equation, and it's similar. Some films do very little business, and we continuously wonder, does it make sense? And then some films surprise us. And so we believe it's a great way to not have to wait for films. If you see something and you're on the platform and you're looking for something to watch on a Saturday night, and you see the art that is appealing to you, and you watch the trailer and it's something you're interested in, it's great value. It's the best value of entertainment that there is. But it's getting more difficult as consumers have so much choice.
All filmmakers have this sort of delusional dream that they say, I'm going to make a great film and then Netflix is going to buy it. What's the odds of that happening? And when I say Netflix, I'm talking any big SVOD platform, Paramount Plus, Hulu, any of them.
1%.
I think you're being kind, actually.
I don't like going to decimals.
And why is that? Why is that, Barry?
Well, if you think about it from their perspective, they have a calendar that they're trying to schedule. They have output deals, which means contracted deals with the studios and other and larger companies where they have a set amount of films that come to them based on the studio's release schedule. They have also acquired a lot of library content over the years. So, The Shawshank Redemption, you'll see on Netflix, etc.
I just watched Mrs. Doubtfire the other day. These are gigantic
high
movies.
quality library titles. Yeah. They make their own movies. They're in the originals business. They produce their own films. And now, the other thing that's happening, if you look on Netflix in the US, you'll see way more foreign language content than you've ever seen before. It's a huge piece of their business that's growing because they're making a lot of local language content and acquiring it or producing it where they'll also have the domestic rights. And that's becoming a much more popular viewing type as well because there's amazing content from international markets.
Squid Game. I mean, Parasite, all these.
When you look at all of that and you put it together and you look at their slate, they'll say, we don't really have much budget left for the rest of this year. But we always find room for something that's spectacular or something that we want. And that's really our goal, is trying to find something that fits with what they're looking for. But it's very difficult. It's a buyer's market for them. They have all the cards.
Right. So you're exploring and experimenting with this low budget indie film now that you told us about a few minutes ago. What would you say to indie filmmakers? Listen, people are going to make films. We know that. Okay, this is a dreamer's business. I deal with people all the time, and all my students, all aspiring young filmmakers with starry eyes who are only thinking about the filmmaking part, not the business part, obviously, because if you were to think about the business part, it wouldn't be as rosy a picture. So people are going to continue to make movies. If somebody wants to kind of give themselves a better chance, a little bit more of a advantage maybe at the end side, what should they be doing and thinking? We talked about maybe tucking away money from marketing. What other things, like what genres, what should, to be as successful as possible, and I'm talking financially, what would you advise?
So once the filmmaker has a script that they're happy with, that they can make at the number that they have raised or that they can raise, I would put the script aside and put together a marketing plan for the movie before you shoot one day in principle. I would sit with the team and say, okay, what are cool events, stunts? What can we shoot during the production where we can use on social media? Because no one does that. It's critical because we sometimes acquire these movies. We have no assets to use. So whether you're going to do it yourself, a lot of people say, I'm going to do it DIY, I'll do it myself. Or you'll give it to a distributor like us. We need assets. So for us to go and spend money making assets, it's kind of a waste of time.
Okay, let me just clarify. Assets meaning poster, like key art, as you call it, trailer, and production stills, like shots of the actors and different poses and stuff.
And different executions of art. Don't just do one thing. Do different looks. Do portraits of all the leads. Do behind-the-scenes interviews with it. Like as much video and still content as you can, so we have an arsenal with which to use to try to monetize the film.
Promote it.
And then, to your point, what are the best genres? And that requires research, but it also requires passion. If you're a horror guy, you're not going to make a romantic comedy. You got to make a horror. So look at all the horror movies that have been successful in the last couple of years and take the best parts of those that you think you can emulate with your budget. The other thing is the market is changing rapidly all the time. So what was successful 6 months ago is a whole different world today. So you also have to think ahead and project as to where the market's going. And maybe, for $25,000, you go and find someone who's made a really good horror movie and you bring them on as a producer or an executive producer to get a name on the movie. There's different creative ways to do it that don't cost too much money, that give you the best shot at rising to the top of your peer group of films.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let me ask you this. So now somebody makes a film, low budget indie film. I keep saying 500,000. You're saying 100,000, whatever the number is. First of all, we both agree the film has to be good. It has to be entertaining. All right, you make a crappy film, nobody's going to want to watch it. And
the first 10 minutes have to be good.
They have to be good. They have to be engaging because otherwise people lose interest.
Put everything into the first 10 minutes.
Okay. So now they have this film. They've done well. They've made a good film. Now they're going to go try to find a distributor. How do you choose who the right distributor is? I mean, it's a tricky. I mean, for filmmakers who've never done distribution before, they got to go choose, like, first of all, source its distributors, and then meet them and choose the right one. How do you know what you're getting? I call it like dating on steroids.
Right. And similar to my mention that it's a buyer's market for the streaming platforms, for low budget films, it's a buyer's market for distributors. I think our acquisitions team probably looks at 10 to 20 finished movies a week.
A week. Wow. And we're talking features.
Feature films.
Yeah.
Even 10, say. Think about it, that's 500 movies a year.
And that's just your team.
Absolutely. Well, I'm sure they're going to everyone.
Yeah.
So it's really, we have to connect with it. So number one, it has to be someone who's presenting it to us that our team responds to. So that's one thing. But obviously we watch the movie and we think, can we sell it? Can we make money? If we can't make money on it, it's not worth my time or your time to do this.
But it's a gut thing. It's a subjective thing. Like something.
It is. So we also look at comparable titles that we've had in the past and try to say, okay, well, this is similar to that. We made this much on that movie. Maybe we can do this. You know, here's a couple good looks. I see the art looking this way. It's also about how much do we want to commit in time and money to position the movie. That's why I'm saying the more that the filmmaker does to give us a finished deck of materials, we really respond favorably.
Okay, but you just said that from the perspective of the distributor to the filmmaker. Put yourself in the shoes of the filmmaker who is kind of intimidated by the whole process of distribution, and they're meeting with you and your colleagues, your acquisition people. What are they looking for? I mean, I would say, you know, obviously if you have to have the experience and the skill set and, you know, good history, but is there chemistry? Like, what should they be looking for?
Yeah, listen, this is a people business. I wish I could say that what we do is so different than my three biggest competitors. In the grand scheme of things, we all do the same thing. I happen to believe we have the best team, and that's what makes a big difference for our company. And we take care of our customers at a degree that no one else does. That's important to me. So there definitely has to be chemistry. From the filmmaker side, I would also look at I'd go deep into the websites and social media of the distributors they're talking to and see what kind of films they distribute. See if they can find movies that resonate with them that are similar in tone or genre to the one that they've made, and try to position it, because they should be presenting to us why their movie makes sense in our catalog. We have to take the time and say, you know what, we're willing to invest in you and your movie because it takes up a slot, and our slots are very valuable.
Okay, now let's say there's a match. They like you like them, you like their film. Now comes the deal phase. So I don't know if you've ever been online, but I deal with this all the time. Is filmmakers, you know, I do these consultations, and they all said, I'm going to get screwed by my distributor, or I've been screwed. I have the worst deal. It's terrible. Why did I sign it? What's your take on that?
Don't sign a bad deal. You know, we're very transparent. So the way that we are operating right now is, for these lower budget movies, we will put up a small MG, or we will do a deal where it's something like cost off the top and then we share afterwards. So it's really open, transparent. We're very clear with them as to what we're going to do, how much it's going to cost, where we think it'll fit in our portfolio, and how to release it properly. You said, what can the filmmaker do? We're not going to release this movie theatrically for the majority of the time. But maybe the filmmaker wants to do a premiere with all their friends and family and crew. We want to film some of that. We want to film reactions afterwards. We want all that to be used for social media to promote the movie. So the more assets, the better. But I really do think it is chemistry. You know, we have a team that love independent movies. You know, while we would love to have more Cleaners of the world, $25 million Die Hard-esque movies,
right,
with, you know, Star Wars star and Clive Owen, those aren't run of the mill. We're not able to acquire a lot of those every year. So we fill our slate with movies, some that are lower budget, some that are $5 million movies, $10 million movies. We have them at all ranges. Someone will always say to us, what's the budget of the movie when we're selling it? For me, the answer is, what's the difference?
Exactly. Just look at the movie. Is
it
good or not?
Plays, it plays.
Yeah.
So if I tell you it's $5 million, you're going to offer me half that because the domestic market should be half of the world. It's silly. So the goal of a filmmaker is to have their movie be of a quality where no one's asking us what the price of it is because it looks low budget.
Right. So yeah, that's what I said. You have to be in the game. You got to at least make an entertaining movie. And who cares how much you made it for as long as it's entertaining? Because there's different talent levels in filmmakers. Some people can stretch a dollar way farther than other people can.
Absolutely, there's different places. Our guys are making this movie in Texas. They've stretched a long way to make this happen. I would also suggest, also in preparation, whether it's AFM or Berlin, or go to one of the film markets and just walk around and educate yourself. Because as I said, the 10 movies a week that we're seeing, or 20, you won't believe how many films there are.
Yeah, I've taken filmmakers to markets and they were super intimidated by it. I mean, they were just marveled. They had no idea how vast the market is. How many of the same movies are there from different countries? Let's just get back to the terms of the distribution agreement for a second. What do you think is a fair period of time for distributors? And I'll set the stage here. Distributors are asking for, 10, 12, 15-year terms. And I'm saying, why do they need that? Most of the revenue on a film is generated in the first 4 to 5 years, hopefully, because if it isn't, I don't think it's coming at all. So why do you need 10, 15-year terms if you're going to generate 90 to 95% of the revenue at that time? And, maybe there's an automatic renewal after that.
So the perspective in the industry has always been, if you're paying fair money for the movie, you should have a long run to acquire.
Okay, and I don't disagree with that, but people aren't paying fair money anymore. The MGs are either zero or super small.
Right. So we understand that. We want the filmmaker to make money. We want to make sure that we have recouped all of our costs and we've earned a fair fee before the rights go back. And to your previous comment, we do automatic renewals all the time. But on lower budget films, we are open to doing much shorter terms.
Which would make sense because you're probably not going to give a big MG or any MG at all because you don't want to take that financial risk. And is it fair to say that the revenue, if it doesn't come in the first 3 to 4 years or 4 to 5 years, it's probably not going to come? Is that a fair comment?
That is 100% accurate.
Right. Okay. So I advise filmmakers all the time not to sign contracts with long terms on low budget indie films. And if they do, I talk about these performance thresholds. So if you're going to sign a 10-year term, say after 4 years, if you haven't received this much money, then you have the option to terminate. Because fair is fair.
Agreed. The lowest we'll go is 5 years. Sometimes we do 7, but all in that range. As long as we're made whole, we've earned a profit. We want we want to be writing checks to the producers. That's the name of the game. Means the movie was successful.
Right. The other thing that, if you read on these filmmaker websites and blogs and stuff like that, a lot of people complain about costs. So some people don't put a cost cap in their contracts. Just they don't know to do that. Like filmmakers, they don't know. You guys do distribution contracts every day. A filmmaker does one in their lifetime maybe, and they don't get represented by a lawyer or something like that. So they just don't know what to ask for. So some people say, they sent me this report and there was $80,000 in costs and that ate up all the profit. I say you want your distributor to actually spend money because they have to release the film and delivery costs money, and they maybe they're going to do a little bit of marketing and they got to go to markets and represent it. So you actually want them spending some money, but you don't want them overspending. So how would you advise a filmmaker to handle that?
Exactly with what you're saying. Let's come to an agreeable number that we think we need to spend. You're in agreement with it. It also is good for us to target a spend because that helps us with our budgeting and where we want to spend the money. It keeps us very focused on it. And if we need to go above that number for whatever reason, we have to go back to the filmmaker for written approval.
Right, which is right in the contract. Okay, let's talk about delivery. A lot of filmmakers just don't even understand how to deliver a film to a distributor. It's a nightmare because they didn't prepare. They just don't know delivery. So can you just talk a little bit about that?
You're right. I mean, we have a fantastic delivery executive, and this is what he deals with every day, the inbound and the outbound. But obviously, in order for there to be outbound, there has to be enough inbound to be able to make the materials.
Right. So can you explain sort of just some of the materials that people should be aware of?
Well, we need the right master. It's all about the master. So I think the key is to make sure that when you're making an indie movie, you spend money on a post-production executive who knows what they're doing, and you go and partner with a lab who can help you. And and what we see on indie movies is most of the time they don't budget properly for post-production. They put their money on the screen, they finish principal, and then they say, okay, now what? We're done. It's like, no. Now the work's beginning. The sound, the music, the VFX, putting it all together is a complicated process. That is an art. And you need to have someone on your team who really knows what they're doing because you don't want to be fumbling around with this.
Right.
And if we don't receive what we need from you, we have to go make it ourselves, which is really costly, which just delays how long it takes for you to get any money back.
Yeah. Delivery is complicated, folks who are listening. I mean, you don't take it for granted. You got to deliver the assets properly and the assets that they require. Otherwise, they can't send it to a streaming platform. They just can't. They can't do the outbound.
Agree with the distributor in advance exactly what they need, right? We have a very robust delivery schedule. We don't need every single item on a low budget movie because we're not releasing it theatrically. We're not dubbing it. So depending on how the movie is going to be released, the delivery schedule can be pared down. That's a really important thing to go over with your distributor to make sure that you've budgeted for everything that we or they need.
So what about filmmakers that kind of go in and what you just said earlier, spend all their money on production and don't have anything left over for post-production?
If we see a cut of the movie and we think it's fantastic, maybe we'll take on that obligation or burden. For the most part, we won't. So they need to go and raise another $50,000 to put it through post and make sure it happens.
Right. You are a domestic distributor. I know you know the international business, but primarily you specialize in the U.S. and Canada, as we talked about. Should somebody give you worldwide rights, can you sub-distribute it to other people, or should they split the rights and do different territories? What would you advise?
We are doing global distribution now. In some territories, we're direct. In some territories, we distribute through a partner. What we have found, even for our own films, so we've produced a number of films in the last 5 years. We keep the domestic rights. We sell the foreign rights. The independent foreign sales market has been really struggling the last couple of years. Our movies did not perform at the level that we and the sales company hoped that they would. So for the most part, we're taking back all of our rights and we're exploiting them ourselves. So it depends on the film. If our team responds to the movie and thinks that we can sell it internationally, then we would say, okay, let's do a global deal. But we don't want to take a movie on and have it just sit idle if it's not going to be exploited internationally.
Fair enough. Self-distribution. I mean, I say to people, it's hard enough to make the movie. Distributing it is 10 times harder, believe it or not. People think, oh, distribution, how hard it is. You put it out there, they buy it. Like I say, making the movie, I call it the party. You're spending money, you're having a good time, you're being creative. Like I say, the two hardest parts of the business are getting financing to make the movie and then selling the movie and marketing it properly. Making it is the easiest part. So on the selling sides, sometimes people can't find the right distribution company, they can't negotiate the right deal, or they just feel like they want to take a little bit more charge. So they do self-distribution, me being one of them. But I kind of know distribution, right? So what's your advice to a filmmaker who wants to consider doing it themselves?
I would say not for your first movie. We come across this all the time. We can do it better, cheaper. It just doesn't work like that. In our business, I have friends of mine from outside of the industry saying, oh, you're going to LA all the time. Are you finding new customers? There's no new customers. We are in a closed circuit environment. So we sell to these people every single week. We deal with them in LA, in Seattle, in New York. For someone to come in, that customer is not going to take their call, which means that they're going to have to go through an aggregator, not necessarily a distributor. An aggregator, all they do is take indie movies and put them through. There's no personalization. It's literally a handoff. So my advice would be, and we're actually going through this right now. We were trying to acquire a movie. It was a significant budget, like over a $5 million movie, through one of the big agencies. And the financing company, the people who made the movie, decided that they didn't like the offers, and we were transparent. That's what we do. And then they're going to release it themselves. And I just saw the agent recently, and it's going to be a disaster for them. But people think that they can do it better because they're going to approach it differently. And that's the movie business, right? Whether it's low budget movies or mid-level movies, we always say the uber wealthy people buy sports teams. Other rich people just want to get in the movie business. And if you're successful in another industry, whether you're in real estate or cars or tires, you always think you can do it better because you're smart. And you come into the business and you realize you can't. You have to work with an established team who have been doing this for a while, who have experience and have the relationships. So for DIY, I think the best thing that can happen is for the filmmaker to say, we want to be your partners in the marketing. What can we do as an extension of your team? Whether we have a few dollars to spend or we've just got a lot of, we're going to roll up our sleeves, we're going to be really creative. What can we do to help you? That's a huge asset for a distributor.
Right. Just again, one more thing on the distribution deal. So on the fees, you said, sometimes we'll take a fee, sometimes we'll go cost off 50-50. How does a filmmaker choose what would be a fair fee? Is 30% fair these days? Is lower, higher?
We really won't do a small movie for less than that. It's not worth our time, because if you think about the revenue on the movie, a home run would be doing $200,000 in revenue. We're not going to do that for $40,000. Just that doesn't pay us to do it. So 30 is sort of our floor that we want to be in. Depending on the circumstances, the people, maybe we'll make a deal somewhere, but that's really where we go in with.
And what about on this cost off 50-50 deal? Like, how do you feel like that? Does that tend to work out or not?
It does, because it's really where everyone's aligned. So we set a budget. This is what we want to spend to. We all want to be efficient in our spend, because after we spend, we're all earning profit from dollar one.
Right.
So the cost off 50-50 model works really well with us. We're doing it much more frequently lately.
Okay. So for the indie filmmakers who are processing all this information and their heads are spinning right now, I can assure you, what's the future? Like I as I said to you, movies are always going to get made because people like watching them and people are passionate about it. And, I loved your analogy about you're super rich to buy a sports team and then otherwise you make a movie. So there's always going to be those people who want to play ball. Because it's a sexy business, the movie business. It's very fun and sexy, and people want to be in it. And, people buy lottery tickets. Making movies a heck of a lot more money and more financial risk, but people are willing to take a shot because it's a dream, and dreamers like to take shots. What's the future?
Not only is it a dream, sorry to interrupt you, not only is it a dream, but look what just happened last week, Anora.
Correct. But okay, look at people say that. So a lot of my students said, "Oh, look at you. You're always talking about how hard it is. Look at Anora." I said, first of all, that's an anomaly. But secondly, that didn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, they made a film. It's $6 million still. I understand. So it's not a cheap film, but it won the Palme d'Or, and it was picked up. I think Neon put $18 million behind that film. That is a big high risk financial. So this is not like a low budget indie $500,000 film that won the lottery. That's a difference. That's like saying, look at the Blair Witch, Moonlighting. There's lots of examples. Tons of them. Right. So every once in a while, something comes along. But I'm going to say Anora is not like one of these other sort of Cinderella stories, because it was Neon stepped up and spent some serious money.
And you have a pedigree with Sean Baker. He's a terrific indie director, so you know that you're going to get a high quality film. Yeah.
So that's not the Cinderella, hey, where'd that come from out of the blue, from nowhere. That's not lightning in a bottle. That's more of a strategic plan, I would say. And they're taking a lot of risk. Now, the risk obviously paid off. Hopefully it will. I'm sure it will. They put the money in before the Academy Awards. So they didn't know. It could have, it goes zero at the Academy Awards. It's not going to be the same. A lot of people's jobs are going to be on the line if that's the case. So that's the entrepreneurial part of the business. It takes risk and reward. But just, to kind of conclude, where are we going? Is the business going to, we don't know what distribution is going to do. AI is going to obviously turn things on its head and probably already is. Just to actually take a second, what is AI doing to change the business? What are you noticing?
Listen, we use it as a tool to try to be more efficient. I haven't seen a good script generated from AI yet. So the question is, can it help us to become more effective, be more clear with our marketing materials, help us develop artwork comps? We're doing all that now and learning every step of the way because it's new for us. We think it'll be an enhancement to the marketing of the films, but producing films with AI, it's not something we've gotten into.
Okay, it's coming. Trust me. The tools that I am seeing, it's outrageous. One of my sons, as you know, is in AI, or I don't know, Sammy specializes in that. He told me the stuff we're looking at right now was created 10 years ago. I'm looking out the window here in LA and these Waymo cars are driving by. That's 10 years old technology, and we're looking, wow, that's unbelievable. The stuff that's coming is crazy. But anyways, that's another podcast. But for the regular dreamer indie filmmaker who, can they make a film at 50 or 100,000? Yeah, but they're not going to make a great film. I can assure you that. I specialize in that area. You can pull in some favors once in a while and ask people to work for free, but you can't, that's not sustainable long term. People can't always work for free for you. You got to spend some real money to make a decent film. So even, $500,000 is the future look it. I know filmmakers are still going to do it, and I'm going to advise them, and I'm going to give them tools to try to be successful. But what do you see as the future, like 5-10 years from now?
Well, first I'll say that we're also seeing a more frequent trend where young creative filmmakers are making a short as a proof of concept. So if someone has 15 minutes to see about how they can write, direct, the lighting, the whole story just comes to life. And if it's something you respond to, you're at least buying into something that you know there's some pedigree there.
Okay, but you're not buying a short. You're not buying and releasing the short.
It's a proof of concept.
That's it. It's just giving credibility to the filmmaker.
Correct. The second thing I would say is we're also in a golden age of television, as we see the TV series that have been produced in the last 10 years are unbelievably high quality, and the per episode budgets are the same budget as feature films. So there's a lot of great television out there, which is also eating up the viewership pie. But there's nothing like movies. There's nothing like the Academy Awards. It just doesn't get trumped by any other media, TV, music, anything. Films have a special heart in the lives of consumers, and it just means that we have to do a better job finding films that they're going to respond to, that they're going to want to talk about, that's going to touch them. And it's much more difficult to do that today because we have less opportunities to distribute the films on platforms for mass audiences. So we all need to collectively be better. We need to find better movies. We need to be better marketers. Filmmakers need to do more, stretch their dollars more. So it's a unified front, but I don't think we're going to see any wavering of the film business. And I do think that with technology and this next crop, I've seen some incredible young filmmakers lately that are making high quality productions with just their phones and a $500 camera, and it's unbelievable. So the cost of entry, the barriers are way reduced than they ever were, but you need to have someone who's trained on the back of that to be able to put it together.
What about on the distribution side, though? How people are going to consume the films, like the audiences, there's technologies. I always say to my students, and I say it, and they all say, like, that's not a joke what you're saying. Like at some point, Elon Musk's gonna have a chip that inserts in your head, and you blink, and you change channels, and you change movies. He said, like, that's the technology that's being worked on. Do you see anything coming down the road, like in the next few years, that's gonna change? Like streaming turned obviously home entertainment on its head.
Nothing that's revolutionary yet that we've seen. What we're hoping for is that video on demand is such an important component of the business. And we would like to see films released at a lower cost on video on demand. So it becomes an impulse buy, because $7.99, $9.99, if it's a big budget studio movie like Cleaner for us, over $20, okay, that's one thing. But I believe there should be way more volume of movies at $3.99, $4.99 to get people consuming and getting used to buying content again. We're pricing certain consumers out of the marketplace. If you look at what the studios are doing today, you go on and you want to rent a studio movie, it's only available for purchase for the first while for $25, and then you can rent it for $20. People aren't doing that at the degree that we need them to. So we have to change consumer habits. And it's really hard to do that when they've got these all-you-can-eat subscription services. We need to have more channels in order to exploit our films. And VOD is going away, and we need to keep it as long as we possibly can.
Yeah. Well, that's going to take lots of disruption. I have a couple of things brewing, which I'll tell you about another time. As you know, I do crazy things. I go off the charts and go in different directions because I like to try things. I agree with you that something's going to have to give, just because right now I just don't think it's definitely not serving the filmmakers. It serves the audiences. Like you said, it's a buyer market, not a seller market, in all levels, at every level. In terms of audience also, the audience has so much choice at such low prices that the value proposition, like the perception of quality, has actually gone down. Even though these films are really, really good, people say, well, it's not. They compare it to these $100 million films. It's not that, therefore it's not worth anything. And I say, it actually is worth something, But you're right. That's going to involve a whole kind of psychological change, and we'll see what direction that takes. Any final comments about, to filmmakers that you want to say and advise? Or
I would just reinforce that films are so important for people. It's one of the most affordable forms of entertainment. when someone's going through a hard time, there's nothing like getting into a film for 90 minutes of escapism. When the economy is in rough shape, films are affordable. It's a great way to spend time with your family. So I don't think films are going anywhere. We just need to figure out and continue to hone how we're going to get them in the hands of consumers so they can watch them and talk about them, which is a really important piece. And I would just say to filmmakers, if you're really passionate about this, it's not for the faint of heart. You have to really go for it. You're going to get probably one shot with friends and family to beg, borrow, and steal, borrow money, get a free post, get people to work for a low cost, and you have to make the most of it. So think about the marketing of the film before you make it, and do it in a cohesive way that you are actually approaching it like a business, not just as a passion.
I think that's great advice. Absolutely great advice. And I say to people, look, the film business is only going to be in trouble when people stop wanting to be entertained. And at that point, when the human beings stop wanting entertainment, we got way bigger problems. Way bigger. That means we're in the matrix and people don't even have minds anymore. So that's going to change the whole landscape of the human condition. And we'll worry about it then. But hopefully that won't come. Certainly not in the next 1,000 years or so.
Let's hope not.
Exactly. Okay, Berry, it was always great to chat with you. Thank you for taking the time. This was a wealth of information. We really appreciate it. I'm sure the viewers have thousands of questions after this one. So maybe you'll have to come back on and answer them all. But anyways, great to see you. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
All right, take care. Well, what a great episode that was. I mean, Berry is a wealth of information. Obviously, I've known him for a long time, and he is not only very knowledgeable, but very honest about what's really going on in the business. That advice that he gave about doing a marketing plan and planning out, your strategy for releasing the film before you make it is something that I've been talking to students and audiences for years and years and years. That gives you a strategic advantage. So take that into account, and we'll see you next time. As always, we welcome you to send in your questions and comments. If you want more information about a topic, just email me directly at jdeverett@deverettmedia.com, and hopefully we can respond to them, and hopefully I can forward them to our guest speakers as well.